Tony D and Little Joan here with a screenwriter's rant on The Spy Who Never Dies by request by one of the actresses in the movie. Smash like and subscribe. Thank you for smash liking and subscribing. Please check out my books. Links in the description. Comedy Horror in South Jersey. It's the Pineys books 1 through 8. Check it out. It's at Amazon.com. And if you have Kindle Unlimited, the books are free to download. And we still get paid. And if you buy a book, Little Joan over there gets a nice treat. Oh, she's so hungry. Look how hungry Little Joan is. Anyhow, The Spy Who Never Dies. It is a James Bond parody starring this guy. Written and directed by Corey Pearson. And it is an action comedy film. Paul O'Brien is his name. Paul O'Brien. The actress who told me to look at her movie is Christy Wordsworth. You can see her here. Looking good, Christy. Looking good. And you could see there's a giant cast here. She's 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth listed in the cast. And basically it's a James Bond parody about a guy who's a super spy, and he's got fans in the spy world, and he does all the spy James Bondy type things. He's got like a stun gun, but he also kills people. And then one day he meets the girl of his dreams, who has no connection to the spy world. And then, of course, she gets taken up. That's not Christy, is it? No, she doesn't play. No, that's somebody else. I think Christy is one of the other girls in the movie. Or is that Christy? I don't think it is. Let me look at her again. Let's see. Christy plays Jennifer. Jennifer. I don't think that's her. I think that's... No, maybe? Maybe? Is it Teresa? Who's first? No. Man, it's hard to tell. So many beautiful women. So, yeah. So, basically, or does she play the villain? Oh, that could be her. Maybe? I think the villain's name is Trident. Let's see if it's listed as Trident. Maybe that's her. Because maybe she's Jennifer. They've got Villain Squad. Not sure. Anyhow, it's a, it is a comedy, which I like, because we desperately need comedies. That being said, it's kind of a comedy, not quite to Airplane levels of comedy, because I don't think it's hitting enough times for it to be like Airplane level of comedy. The Spy Who Never Dies, it's kind of funny. Let's see. Again, Corey Pearson does all the heavy lifting. He's also a producer, and I don't think he's an actor in this. But, for a movie like this, there are a couple of ways you can do it. The first way is like Airplane, like Top Secret with Val Kilmer, if you've ever seen that. Top Secret is like an Airplane version of a spy movie, only it's World War II spies, right? And it's just silly. It's just ridiculous from beginning to end. Every minute of the movie, they jam-pack it full of jokes. It's like an episode of Family Guy. It's just crazy, insane. It doesn't obey the laws of physics. It follows the movie, kinda. And then the other way you go is kind of like Archer, right? And Archer's a good sort of comparison here, because Archer's a spy TV show. But the thing about Archer is the comedy's not that silly. It's grounded in enough reality that there's a danger behind it. So, thank you, Joe. Thank you for ruining everything, as always. Here, sit here and shut up. So, Archer is grounded in enough reality that there is some danger. So when they get into trouble, it's actual trouble. The problem with doing it the other way is if you're not going to jam-pack it with movie jokes one after another, so the plot almost doesn't matter, then you undermine the reality. So there's a scene in this where the spy is standing there, and one of his guys shoots at him, a villain, and they even call the guys Villain Squad in the credits, so there you go. And he machine guns, and he misses him, and he's only standing 10 feet away, and he should obviously hit him, right? And he doesn't, and that's because he's the spy who never dies, and that's the joke, right? Okay, that's not in and of itself funny. Now, maybe there's an explanation that makes it freaking hilarious that he never gets shot, but off the top of my head, I can't think of one. It's really hard to have a character like that unless you have some kind of background of why. Now, in Archer, it's just that Archer is kind of a spoiled jerk. He was raised, by a single mom who was rich and spoiled him, but also screwed him up. So even though everything just always seems to work out for Archer, which is funny because he's kind of a jerk, it works. That dynamic works. Does it work for here? I'm not seeing it in the trailer. So I don't know if it's silly enough to be like Airplane or funny enough to be Archer. I think a lot of times, comedy is really tough. It's really tough. And I've written comedy for a long time. It's a young man's game. I've always said it was. So if I was approached to write something like this, the first thing I would do is I would determine which kind of movie you'd do. And if I was going to do an Archer style comedy, meaning that there would be some realistic danger, I'd have to really sit down and think about what spies actually do and how I can convey that to the audience, right? And in this day and age, it's really tough. It's really tough to take guys from the CIA, and make them nice and heroic, because it's well known that the CIA, in reality, does terrible, terrible things. So you have to address that in a comedy if you were doing something like Archer. Now, if you were doing something totally silly, it wouldn't even matter if he was called, worked for the CIA. You'd just make up a crazy agency he worked for, like in Get Smart, when it was Control versus Chaos. Those were the names of the spy agencies. And it was obvious the CIA versus the KGB, but they didn't want to be so blatant about it. So, on that, all that being said, it doesn't look awful. In fact, there looks to be, that looks like Christy there. Is that Christy? Is Jennifer, is that her character, Jennifer? Or am I just not recognizing her because of the wig? I'm not sure. Or is that Jennifer? Beautiful women all kind of look, they all kind of blur together because I don't know them. I mean, they all sort of look really beautiful. So, it's kind of hard to say. Maybe this is Jennifer here. And they got a Q guy, and there looks to be some funny moments with him. I don't know if it's that funny. Like, if it was that funny, if it was top secret level of funny, Airplane level of funny, we should see about 15 jokes in this trailer. And that should be like 15 out of like 300 jokes that are in this. They should be visual gags. Every kind of gag, you have to pull out all the stops to do that level of comedy. If you're actually doing a plot, then the plot has to be at least semi-realistic. It has to be at least, if you're going to do this thing like, they did a movie years ago. What the hell was it called? It was about, it was a parody of Wild West characters, but they approached it from the angle that the Wild West characters are iconic. There's always like a main guy and a sidekick. Oh God, I want to say like Hustler's Lullaby or something like that. So they were kind of like parodying the Western tropes, but at the same time the characters kind of knew that. They kind of knew the tropes. Like the hero was always the hero, the sidekick always is the sidekick, doesn't get the girl, kind of thing. So the characters were acknowledging that within the movie. And you could do something like that if spy movies were still big, but they're not. And the reason is because the reality is the Cold War has been over for decades. It's not on everybody's mind. I mean, if you set this up, again, it's James Bond. And I said this about James Bond. James Bond doesn't work anymore because it's not set in the Cold War anymore. The danger isn't there. People can't connect to the reality. If you had set it up like, oh, I don't know, a guy trying to, I don't know, capture terrorists, ISIS terrorists, which isn't a very funny premise, but at least people could kind of connect with it a little better. Instead of tuxedos and going to fancy parties and seducing the girl, he's going undercover and, disguising himself as ISIS and infiltrating like a terrorist organization. That would at least be realistic. Now, could you do comedy with that? Yeah, it would be kind of dark. I mean, you look at what's happening over in a certain country in Asia, which I won't say aloud because YouTube's various things. There's probably a lot of spycraft going on there right now. Things with drones, things with intel and misinformation and stuff on the internet. I'm not seeing that here. What I'm seeing is the same stuff we've always seen in spy movies. Oh, he's got a cool watch. There's one line in this, it's the Russians. It's always the Russians. Even when it's not the Russians, it's the Russians. Yeah, you can try to sell that line. It's kind of funny and may even be kind of true, but kind of not really. Maybe if you had set this up as going after the Chinese spies, it might have had a better ring to it. But even that would have been tough because the whole Chinese spy thing is so buried in the media. They're so unwilling to talk about it right now. Most people would just go, oh, really? Is it really this many Chinese spies? For some people it would resonate, like me who follows these things, but for a lot of people it wouldn't. So essentially what you got here is they're trying to take these old spy tropes and inject some life into them. Now the plot itself, that he finds a real girl and who kind of wants to give up the spy life and live a normal life, that's not a bad plot for a movie like this. So, like this scene. This looks funny, like, I don't know, the computer geek gets a girl kind of scene. It's not particularly edgy or hilarious, but I could see why it would be a little fun if you set it up correctly. It would be at least mildly amusing. Would it be fun for, like, the edgelords who are really into comedy? Probably not. Probably they go, huh. There's just not a lot of good movies out there to parody anymore. So you got to go back further in the past, and you're talking about the James Bond movies. I mean, the current ones, they're not iconic. They're just not. Unless unless you count Quantum of Solace and the famous scene in the Hotel Hindenburg. They're okay. And even Casino Royale is pretty good, but even that one I wouldn't call iconic. Like, Roger Moore, Sean Connery, iconic. Those days are far past the Bond franchise. So, and even the title, The Spy Whoever Dies, it's kind of a parody of The Spy Who Loved Me, right? That movie's like 50 years old now. I forget when it came out. It's almost 50 years old if it's not 50, so it's too old to parody. Who is this aimed at? What they needed was a more current movie. Maybe if you had parodied, like if you did a parody of the Fast and Furious, that would resonate. That would be huge. And you could do a very similar plot. You could take the tropes from the Fast and the Furious, you could have a Vin Diesel type character, and then he could want to get out of this crazy life of doing all these, whatever the Fast and I don't even know what the Fast and Furious guys do. Do they rob banks? They steal cars? They race? First they were racing cars, then they're going to other countries. I don't know. They do just crazy stunts. That to me would be, something that would resonate with a current audience. This is like, it's just too old. So I don't think it's bad. and I hate to criticize it because the actress who's in the movie, who I'm sure is very good, it might even be pretty good. But that's about as high as I think it could get. You know, with Archer, man, they just got such great detail in the characters. And for this movie, I'm not seeing that. You know, I think it's a good try, but I think you're in the wrong realm. I think if you wanted it to resonate with audience, you should have done something like The Fast and the Furious. Like, do a parody of that. Oh, yeah, there would have been tropes all day long, and people would have come out for that, too. You know? People would have come out for a Fast and Furious parody, because then you could have done all sorts of crazy stunts, and people would be laughing because you're also making fun of the Fast and Furious thing, and that, it's long overdue to do a send-up of that, right? I would do, you know, even though I haven't watched the movies, I know them enough. I know them enough that I would love to see a parody, especially of The Rock. I would love to see them cast some big dumb guy as The Rock and just, you know, do every Rock trope and make him look like an idiot. And same thing with Vin Diesel and Paul Walker and all the other guys. You know, it would be fun. You know, this is just, it's 30 years too late to do this shtick. Maybe you could have done it back in the 90s. Even then, it was getting long in the tooth, the parody Bond. You know, and they even tried it. They've tried this a few times over the years. They tried it with Jackie Chan in a movie called The Tuxedo. But again, it doesn't look awful. I mean, it even has nice effects. Like this scene, the acting looks good. It doesn't look awful. And that's a shame. So I think there's a lot of talent here. I just think you've been kind of applying it to the wrong thing. And I don't think the script is really up to task. I mean, it would have been tough. I mean, you know, Archer to me is amazing. It's an amazing TV show. And that they pulled that off and made it funny is impressive because of the age. But also, too, there's a great deal of detail in Archer. A huge amount of detail. And, you know, this is sort of playing on tropes that people kind of are like barely there. Another thing you could have done is superheroes, right? You could have done a Batman parody. Again, that would have probably resonated slightly better. Or a parody of a Marvel movie. Even that is that would be tough too, because Marvel movies are, you know, superheroes are already kind of ridiculous to begin with. But anyhow, I hate to, you know, again, I like it. I like the cast. I like everything about this except the premise. The premise, I just wish you'd taken up almost anything else. Now, would I give this a chance? Maybe. Because it's a comedy and because I like everything else about it, I might give it a chance. And it would probably be pretty watchable, I'm gonna say. So, but again, it's, you know, I wish it well. I want movies like this to do well because we need comedies. In this day and age, we need comedies. And I kind of hope they go into some of the stuff that's going on now. That would really help it, I think, and give it a bit of an edge and a bit of a connection. So, let's hope it does well. I hope it does well. Christy, sorry I can't give it a better review based on my analysis, but, you know, first act, he's a spy, he's getting bored. Second act, he meets a beautiful girl, probably mistakes her for somebody he should have met in the spy world, and then falls in love with her, and then wants to quit the spy game but keeps getting dragged back in, and then he has to drag her into his world, and he doesn't want to do that. He keeps her from it as long as he can until she gets kidnapped, and then he has to reveal that he's a super secret spy, and, you know, he's worried she won't love him anymore, but in the end she does. And I don't know, either she gets dragged into his world and she becomes a spy too, or he finally retires and becomes a normal guy, is sort of the ending I see. So that's it for me, Tony D, doing it by request. Check us out on Odysee, Bitchute, and Rumble for our more base takes. We got a news blast and a Hollywoke hot take, and we'll see you tomorrow.